Ilona, welcome to the Giving You Everything podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Hey, Victoria. I'm doing awesome. I'm so excited to be on your show.
I know I'm so excited that you're here today. I know that you are a Real Housewives Bravo reality TV buff, and the passion that I've already heard you express for reality TV has got me going. I don't think I've had anyone on the show yet that brings such energy. So I'm so excited to have you here today.
I can't wait. Most of my friends know that it's not even a dirty secret because I'm not even ashamed of it. I'm just always looking for the proper outlet to express,
I love
to
it.
express my views and my opinions. And really, there should be a course, I think, taught on the housewives
Maybe you can
in
teach it.
colleges.
Yes, maybe you can teach it one day. And you're also a badass. You're also a badass in a lot of other respects as well. You have your
Oh,
own
thank you.
podcast, and you're in finance. And I'm excited for everybody to kind of learn a little bit about your career too, as well as how you've developed your podcasts over time and your writing.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I hope I don't
I
let the listeners
know.
down.
You're not letting anyone down, mainly because you're about to blow it up with the TV show we have today. So I'm excited. How's your morning been? You said, I think, yeah, what were you up to this morning?
Yeah, so I went for a swim this morning. I've been trying
Yeah.
to slowly but surely kind of increase my yardage in swimming. And I think today I did the longest swim that I've done in a while. And it was pretty exhausting, but it's one of those feelings when you're like, I did it. I'm like, the worst part of my day
Yes.
is over.
Yes. And are you a
So
swimmer? Were you like an athlete growing up?
Um, kind of. I mean, my parents put me into different sports when I was
Hmm.
younger, mostly individual sports,
Okay.
and mostly very Russian sports because my mom is
Russian.
Russian. So I did,
Oh,
yeah, hence the name.
yep.
But I did like, I did figure skating and rhythmic gymnastics, which is like
Oh
very
my
Russian.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I actually am just picking up figure skating. I'm learning. I'm in my seventh week of learning. So you can give me
Are
some
you having a
tips.
blast? My coach always was like, you need to fall more. And I was like, ew, falling sucks.
I
So are
have not
you,
fallen
how's
yet.
the
I
fall?
have not fallen. And I think
Good.
falling as a child is going to feel a little different than falling as an adult. There's a lot coming
I know,
down
right?
for me.
Yeah, that's why I was like, that's what they told me as a kid, but I wonder if they tell it to adults or if they're like, please don't because
Yeah.
orthopedic surgery is expensive.
Yeah, I've had plenty of orthopedic surgery, and yeah, I think it's the first class was you bend, it's so you fall, so you sick, it's okay, if you think you're falling, bend your knees, you're gonna sit down instead of flailing all over the place. So I'll report back on my first fall one day, hopefully in a good state and not at an orthopedic hospital or doctor's
Are you
office.
skating backwards yet? Or
I'm doing some swizzles backwards, and I'm doing a little bit of, I forgot also we did it's some hard things backwards. Backwards is difficult.
it is. It is, but it's really fun once you get it.
I know. I'm so excited. It's fun to learn a new sport. Being older, it sounds like you were swimming, so that's also. Did you do that growing up?
My so I took like lessons when I was younger. I
Okay.
was never on a swim team, unfortunately. I
Ah.
really wish I had been, but I took lessons, so I kind of had
Mm.
the basics of technique and stuff, which is nice because I like both of my parents are pretty cool for different reasons, but they both started swimming as adults, and
Oh,
I'm always way
really?
more in awe of them because I'm like, wow, learning as
Oh,
an adult, as you know, with the figure skating for you is way
yeah.
different. So
Yep.
they kind of inspired me to pick it back up
Oh,
and do it more seriously because I was like,
I
well, they
love
started from
that.
zero later on. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
I love that.
it's like a fun thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's fun to do something where you're I don't know, certainly I'm competitive. So where I'm not all in my competitive mode just yet. I'm just oh, I'm supposed to be bad, I'm supposed to be growing. So it's always fun to do that as an adult.
But I'm always competitive with myself. Like I,
You're
like even if
wait,
there's
that's
no one
not
next
me.
to me,
I'm actually competitive. You know what?
even when I'm
You know
like,
what, Ilona?
no, I'm like,
I'm
yeah,
oh, I'm not competitive, but yeah, right. I went to, everyone's getting better at me, and I'm oh god, I need to go practice in between sessions. So okay, yeah.
I I can definitely relate, and I, not to sound like a creep, but I think
Yeah.
I was looking at your Instagram and like
Uh-huh.
you're a Leo as well,
You're
right?
a Leo. Oh my god.
I'm a
Oh
Leo
my
too.
gosh.
Yeah,
Look
I
at
feel
like this is for my Leo best friend. Like literally sitting up. My dog is named Leo.
oh my god. So
I'm the
I
most
feel like
Leo.
what I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's that
Yeah.
kind of like innate drive, and it's just for. I'll give you
Yes.
an example of this because I did. I don't usually do turkey trots, but I did one this year with my dad,
Oh, okay.
and it was just a pretty. It was like a 5K, nothing crazy. Because my dad, he
Yeah.
actually competed. He did his first ever Ironman, so like a 5K for him is like,
Wow.
please, it's like
Wow. Both your
popcorn.
parents are active.
They are.
Oh,
I
wow.
love them. They're my heroes in that regard. But
Oh,
so we were doing our so my dad and I were like, we started kind of, in the back because it's, it's 5K for a
yeah.
turkey trot. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. So we started in the back, and that meant that a lot of people were walking, so you kind of like ran past them.
Yeah.
And then I checked my time; it was like the fastest. And I'm not really a runner, but it was the fastest. My dad was like, "You're out of control," and I was like, "What?" And I think it was because I was like, "This is great." I like loved going
Yeah.
past everybody, so I was
Yeah.
like,
It's
"If
a
you
good
want me to go
feeling.
fast, you need me to like chase them." So I think it's like I was like, "Yeah, what can I say? I like to beat people like
I
competitively, I
know.
guess."
It is fun. It is fun to be good at things. That's definitely true.
It's a good
Awesome.
drive.
Well, we'll have to talk offline a little bit more. I want to hear more about your competitive spirit and about your family. It sounds like there's some beautiful stories there as well. So
Yeah.
you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and then one of my first questions also is like, what was your gateway into reality TV? So a short little sweet introduction, and then, maybe as a
Okay.
kid, what were some shows that got you into reality TV?
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I am an only child. My parents are Cuban and Russian. I was actually born in
Love
Cuba
it.
and
Oh,
lived in, yeah, and lived in Russia for a little bit before immigrating to the US when I was 5 years old. Um, and I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and
yeah.
went to college on the East Coast. I went to Penn for my undergrad and have lived like in New York and San Francisco. I currently live in Los Angeles, and I studied economics at Wharton. So
Yeah.
my day job, or built my career in finance and investments. But um, I I think my upbringing was like tailor made for reality TV consumption because I spent a
No.
lot of summers as an only child. Like I spent a lot of summers kind of by myself, like doing my own thing because my
Oh,
parents were both
yes.
working. So when I come home from school, or if usually in the summers, my parents would put me like in a summer camp, or I would visit my family in Russia. But you have a lot of downtime, and I would,
Uh-huh.
watch TV as one does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my portal to reality television was definitely the Real Housewives because I vividly recall the summer that I started watching the Real Houses of Orange County, and I
Oh
was
my
like, "What
god.
is this?"
Our
And
souls are
for
matched because I remember that summer too.
right? Right?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I was definitely in high school. It was definitely before
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
And I encourage all of the listeners to just go back and watch
That
season
that
1, like the
season.
very beginning.
Yes.
Right? Like so much so first of all, it's before the recession. Just like flagrant spending. Everyone's in these fake jobs and these houses made of stucco.
I know, and,
Like,
like, it's like a real like, it is like a real community, like, gated community in Orange County, and,
yeah.
like, the thing
Coto
that's,
de
like,
casa.
Coto de Casa, like, the kids are so spoiled.
Horrible
Like,
children.
horrible children. And just the production value is 0, so it's literally like they're running around with, like, a home
They
video
also had those
camera.
like handkerchief style halter tops that were like
It's
everywhere.
so bad. Just jewels, and you see it in the show we're gonna talk about now too, but the jewels on your top. I mean, I was wearing them, but like
Yeah. And the Belle Flare jeans. Although
yes.
now that I talk about it, I think I lied. I think my real entry, and I
Okay.
remember this, was Laguna
Uh-huh.
Beach
Yes, yes.
because it was like the California transition from Laguna Beach into Orange County. And I vividly
Ah.
remember my AP art history teacher saying, well, if Ilona watches Laguna Beach, then I think it must be okay because she's kind of smart, so I think it's fine. And I was like, is there a problem with this show? Because I love it.
Oh my
Like,
goodness. I'm just like impressed by your courage to be sharing at school. Like a kid who's going,
Yeah.
who's obviously going to Penn is like, yeah, and I'm watching Laguna Beach at home. Like that's like almost the reason why I made this show is because I'm like, people, it's like you go in the workplace and people aren't like, hey, like what reality TV show have you been watching? So the fact that you were just like, you were ready to share that, you were just like, this is me.
Living my truth. It was fascinating. It's just so, there's so many layers to it. I truly believe that some of the best seasons of Real Housewives need to be in the Smithsonian, and I'm not even like exaggerating this, because it's like a glimpse into like tragedy
Yes.
and
Oh,
like the human like like the social contract, human relations. It's just so much going
yes.
on. Um, but these were these are my first forays probably that I can recall into reality, and very specifically, I have that memory of that summer of like maybe you can call it the
Yeah.
California summer.
We need to get to BravoCon together. That's what needs to happen. We need to go next year. Let's put that into the univerest. If anyone
Mood
listens to this
board.
podcast and works at
Andy,
BravoCon, Andy,
Andy, we're big fans.
the biggest. Okay. So Laguna Beach slash the OC was your
Hmm.
gateway, which amazing, incredible. Please, people go watch those
Hmm.
shows if you haven't. It was a blast from the past. And can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about like what show we're here to talk about today? Which one is kind of your go-to?
So Victoria, as you know, it was very difficult for me to pick
It was
just one.
difficult for Ilona.
I really went through the pros and cons of every single city in the franchise. We narrowed it down to my
Yeah,
personal top three at the moment,
give
which
it.
were
Yeah.
Miami, Potomac, and Atlanta.
Yes.
Let's walk the listeners through the process of elimination that occurred
Yes.
to come to Atlanta. Um,
Important.
Real House, yes. So Real Houses in Miami, obviously airing as we speak. It's got this Renaissance vibe going on where it was, put offline, then brought back to life on Peacock, and now
Mhm.
sitting in its rightful throne back on Bravo where it belongs. What a
It's so
journey! What
good.
an
It
arc!
is so good.
It's phenomenal. It's what we
Yeah.
need. It's sorry the Beverly Hills girlies, no shade, but we need to come
So
up to this
bad.
standard.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then there's Potomac, right? Which is also an incredible, just kind of almost like a dark horse, you can say, within it. Because
Yeah.
I think it was a kind of like a slower burn, but Mother Kern is always delivering. Robin stays dizzy.
I love
And
Robin. I love Robin. I
I
am a La
do.
Robin. I am a La Robin. I'm sorry. Might break your
It's
heart. We
okay.
might have a different conversation from now on, but
It's we can do another episode just on Robin.
like a therapy session.
Yeah, we can just opine because I want better for her. I want better for
I
her.
know. I know.
Um,
Okay, so Potomac. Yes.
Potomac was also up there, but the reason I picked Atlanta is because I probably quote it at least once a day, and so I was like, how can I not, honor this show that has given so much to my personal vocabulary? Um, and we decided on I think season two or one of the
We
earlier
did.
seasons because it was just such a transformative era, I believe, in the Real Housewives kind of
Yes.
genre.
Yes, and it is the season that has your most quotes, right?
I do believe, although I now that I go through my head, I'm like, which one was that? But I believe this is the season that had Who Gon Check Me Boo, I
Yes,
believe.
and I saw the episode. It was so she chose Real Housewives of Atlanta, which I agree is the best franchise. People will come and they'll be like, "I watch Housewives, but I've never seen Atlanta." And well, there's probably
We
some.
have we have opinions on those people. We won't
We
say them
do.
on air, but we
I'm
have
gonna keep them to
opinions.
myself, but just look at the
Yes.
pattern, and people will say what they haven't and have seen. Yeah, people will have opinions, and we'll let them. We'll let them have their opinions. But Atlanta is the franchise. I tell people that is season over season the best franchise that exists. It gives you drama and interest and storyline every single season, every single one. And in this one, it's so funny because I've watched all of them. Sheree is not paying her bills, which is a theme. It's still happening. And so it's this lawyer she's getting in a fight with, and she's like, who gonna check me, boo? And they're screaming like in this law office. And she's just, I mean, it's clearly like she's up here because the cameras are on, but it's also hilarious. You're like, wow. So yes, this is a
She
great
also
season.
I that scene lives rent free in my mind because Sheree is wearing these sunglasses inside, and she does that little neck cock, who gonna check me,
Yeah.
boo.
Yeah.
And her vein is like her like this vein in her neck is bullshit. Like
This is
I
a
could
core
see it,
memory.
that
This is a
scene
core memory for you.
core. And she's just in her sun, and that this guy just goes off on her. It's just there's just so yeah, this season. I think Sheree is one of the great housewives of the
Yes.
franchise.
Mhm.
I know she's a little, and she has such a great like. I think at the beginning she was so when Kenya came on and like read her for Philip and like
Yeah.
Chateau she can or like oh check whatever all that stuff. It was very easy to like make fun of Sheree, but then
Yeah.
later in later seasons, right when we hear about the difficult relationship
Mhm.
she had with when we really
Yeah.
see like Bob, for example, um,
Yes.
I feel like she like the viewers really connected with her in a different
Oh,
level
yeah.
than we did
Oh,
in these
yeah.
earlier seasons where we were kind of like, what is going on with this woman? Like,
Yes,
what
it's
is she
like
doing?
yeah, she wasn't really showing kind of the backstory. You didn't see her kids at all in the beginning, like,
Right,
too much, and she was just kind of being, like, trying to be as fabulous as she could, and it's funny because
right.
this is also them talking about, like, "Oh, She by Sheree didn't happen," and so it's finally happened this last season. I don't know what season we're on, but she's finally had her line released.
17 years later, listen.
Oh my god. Then it was just like all these Sheen knockoffs, which like you know what everyone's talking shit, but I will buy the Sheen knockoff that says She by Sheree. Maybe I didn't, but maybe
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
maybe
I would like to support Sheree, maybe, but I don't know
yeah
how much I want to support
maybe
her that much.
maybe
Maybe.
maybe. Oh, got it. Okay. So Sheree seems to be someone you really love from the franchise. Do you have some other
Yes.
like top housewives?
In Atlanta or like in
Yeah,
general?
in Atlanta. We're
In Atlanta. Oh, okay. I was like, oh my God. So, I mean, Nene is probably the most cool. If
yes.
you're ever having a bad day, I definitely encourage you to just go on YouTube and type in like Nene Leaks best of. And just, I think there's like, no, I'm not even joking, like a 10-part YouTube series on this
Oh
because
my
it's just like,
gosh.
she's effortlessly witty, what can you say? She
Yeah.
is just so funny. She's almost like the Greek
Yes.
chorus, the stand-in for the audience for all
Yes.
the ridiculousness that's going on. And what is Nene without a great rival, the great villain that is Kim Zolciak, right? And like,
Yeah.
this is why I love season 2 so much. It's
I
because
know.
what a complete turnaround from season 1, where Kim
Yeah.
and Nene are just like best buds, so close.
Yes.
And then see, like, well, the reunion in season 1 is really close your legs to married men, and it's and then
Yeah.
from that point on, it's like this, like this, like
Yeah. I know.
this chasm between the two of them. And season 2 is really like the beginning of this like great polarity between Kim and Nene. And I really, I mean, Nene is like an all-star on her own, but I really think that
Yeah.
tension with Kim
Mhm.
is what brought some of the best scenes to the
I
franchise, in my
know.
opinion.
I know. It's so true. And it's interesting that they were really only close for one season because in my mind, they were like best friends for,
Right?
forever and every season. And yeah, it really becomes a big deal. And I love the beginning seasons too, because like, Kim is the only white housewife on this like all black cast. And I just think
Yes.
it is so interesting because I mean, there's some problematic things, but also she like holds her own and it's totally like it doesn't even become like it does become a topic of like sometimes, but like not
Until
really. Like
Croy.
you
Until Croy.
yes, you're right. That is when it happens cuz like for a
Yeah.
while it's kind of seamless. Like cuz she is friends with these women
Yes.
and she's holding her own too, but that rivalry of like Nene and Kim is just is beautiful to be honest and you're always just rooting for them to be friends again even now sometimes I'm like are they going to be friends again like
I know. I know, and I think there was also some great. When I remember those early episodes, there's always a great footage of like Nene with Kim's children, and you can just see that the bond,
Yes.
like the bond that
Yes. I
Kim's kids had
know.
with Nene was very
Yeah.
genuine and not one that you can
Yeah.
fake for cameras because kids can't really
Mhm.
do that.
No.
Um, so yeah, you can definitely tell there was like a real friendship there, and
Yep.
just seeing it like completely
I
implode on
know.
camera is wild.
They say some crazy things about each other, like, through the seasons. It gets a little wild.
They do. And is this the season where Nene does the imitation of Kim? And
I
she's
don't
like, my name's she like drunkenly singing the way she thinks that Kim sounds like in Don't Be Tardy. Or is that season 3? I can't remember, but
well,
it's like so
give us
goals.
yeah, can you give us the imperson no, you cannot.
I
You
shan't be
should.
doing that.
Okay, we shouldn't do it. Okay, let's not let's
But
not
the
put it all up.
viewers can
Go
find this
watch.
on
Yeah,
YouTube.
find it on YouTube or watch the season too if you're like really
Exactly.
we're all gonna run out of TV soon with a strike that happens. So go watch some
You're right.
archival Peacock, you know, Real Housewives of Atlanta. Okay, so
Definitely.
you chose a season 2. Do you want to like lay the land of
Yeah.
what you remember happened? And then like also I know you're an
Mhm.
econ major. Tell me what was going on in the world and
Yes.
maybe how that impacted these women or
Yes.
didn't.
Yes. So, picture this if you will. The city is autumn 2008. Little Ilona is sitting in her dorm room at Penn with her sophomore year roommate. We both have our MacBook 13 inches up.
Love it.
And I was like, we need to watch The Real Housewives, and there's a new season. It's going to be Atlanta. And, season 1 starts with, Kim and this ridiculous wig. And then we have Nene. And just like and at the time, I remember I think the reason Atlanta always has a special place in my heart as well is because it was one of the first seasons that was not on the coasts. So
Oh,
I remember like the scenery. Whenever I was in college, I was always a little bit homesick for Kentucky, and like I know Georgia does not look like Kentucky, but so like the accent, some of the
yeah.
things, I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
just kind of reminds me of home and a little kind of. So I
Oh,
guess I always had that
yeah.
kind of fondness for it. But season 2 takes place, right like in the early dregs of the Great Recession. So we're seeing,
Okay. Mhm.
which is also like a
Mhm.
super interesting time, right, to
Yes.
film, and I think it was an interesting era. Maybe this is why the Housewives took off when they did, but like we really needed. I mean, I was in college at the time, so thankfully I wasn't entering the job market. But I remember it was a really hard
Yeah,
time.
I was.
I knew a lot
Yeah.
of people who got laid off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
layoffs
was
like
a hard time.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Bank. I was at Wharton, and then like half the banks recruiting were like they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So there was like this sense of like there's a seismic shift going on in the world, and the kind of ludicrous things going on in these women's lives were like a great escape, really.
Yeah.
Um, and then also I think this is after like the election of Obama, so there's also this feeling of like a new hope
Yeah.
permeating at the same time. So it was like a really weird. It kind of felt like when you're swimming in the ocean and you're in the warm
Yeah.
water, and then suddenly like the cold, you're like, oh my god, that's deep. It was
Yeah.
like that body feeling was what we
It's
were all
frightening.
living in 2009.
That is such a good analogy for what it felt like,
Right?
and when that feeling comes to me in the
You're
ocean,
like,
I'm like, "There's a shark, I'm gonna die
there's a
now." Like,
shark.
like,
Yeah.
that was what it felt like, and you're right, this was a great escape. I was like I'm a few years older than you, so I was actually teaching in Chicago. I
Oh
was a teacher
wow.
for America, and so I was just laying in my bed with my friends too, watching just kidding, I had a TV, but, sometimes we were laying in bed and watching it too.
Yeah.
So I love the backdrop. And so you have this career in finance and you're bringing this economic like background to the show. If you were going to let any of these housewives manage your finances, which housewife from the season do you most and least trust?
Okay. So from Atlanta, it's definitely Candy, right?
Okay, obviously
Because
she's so rich.
she's a Taurus. Give him my money. Give it to her. Give it to her.
Oh, the Taurus. My best friend's a Taurus, and Yeah, she likes to spend money, but she is good with money.
Yeah, I also know like probably all the signs of most of the housewives, the relevant ones, I should say.
I love
And
it.
it's just so fascinating because a lot of I always I'm like for example, Beverly Hills, this has a lot of Cancers and Virgos, and I'm like, well, that's why that's a mess. No
Oh,
shade to our Cancer and Virgo friends.
yeah, they got a lot of
Versus
feelings.
Atlanta, exactly, and a lot of like
Mhm.
passive communication. Um,
My mom's a
but
Cancer, my
definitely,
dad's a Virgo, so
my
I know
dad's a
what
Virgo too.
yeah,
We connect on this
yeah,
cosmic plane.
mhm,
But definitely on Atlanta, I would trust Candy to manage my money because
yep.
obviously she was it was really cool. I don't remember if she was season 2 or season 3. I think she might have
She's
been
season
season
2,
2.
she's on the season, she's introduced, and she's kinda just
There
trying
we
to get
go.
back, into the
She
music
is.
scene. She's been out for a little bit, or maybe she's been writing behind the
Yeah.
scenes knowing Candy.
But she's introduced as like low key, the writer of No
Mhm.
Scrubs. Obviously,
Yeah.
everyone who watched that show would have known that
Yeah.
song and the
Yeah,
impact
and
that it had.
T-Boz is on the show, like, T-Boz
What? Oh my
yeah,
god.
she's like they have
That's
lunch
true.
together. Yeah.
Right? So, can't like when I think Candy was really a game changer for the credibility of the show, and I think opened up the
Yeah.
pathway, right? Because she was a true, like a self-made housewife,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
definitely, I'm giving my money. Like, can't she's grown that empire. And you see it in every season. She has like a new house,
Yes.
new
Yeah.
cars, like,
Yeah.
and
She's
she just
acting,
seems
she's singing, she's doing it all.
getting royalties. And yeah, so I think she's very, 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 and she's also made from when we look at season 2, she's one of the few castmates, excuse me, that's still on the current like
Yes.
iteration
Yes.
of Housewives
And has
versus
been
like
on all of
Kim's.
them. Yeah.
Exactly. So her staying power, like a true
Mhm.
Taurus, cannot be undermined.
Love
So I would
it.
definitely trust Candy. Who I
Yes.
would not trust from that franchise.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna. What can I?
You know it's gonna
I know
be.
Cynthia was not. I don't know if she was on this season yet. Was
Oh,
she or no?
she's not on it yet, but
Okay.
we can bring in Cynthia. You think you would trust Cynthia less than Shrey?
Because she. Oh God, that's really hard. But Cynthia, because she was so dumb with Peter. Girl, Cynthia, if you're listening, I'm really sorry.
Well,
But
yeah,
that whole bar none.
well, his bars I think are successful now.
Are they? Are they?
Unclear. You know what? You're right. Are
Unclear.
they? Is true. Because yeah, you do know because you watch Miami, so you do know what's going on.
so, so
Or was that
I feel
Potomac? It
like
was Potomac.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
he's everywhere, huh? But I think I would
Hmm.
probably trust. It's so hard because they also. I mean, Kim's like going through like this bankruptcy, so she like definitely
Oh
not
God.
Kim.
Yeah. Not Kim.
Basically, none of them. None of them.
None of
I
them.
would only
Just
trust Candy.
Candy. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I think that's the right choice. That's the right choice. Awesome. Okay, like, and so what's kept you coming back to Atlanta and Housewives? Like, what kind of keeps you coming back to Real Housewives of Atlanta and maybe just like Housewives franchises in general? Why do you keep tuning in?
I mean, Atlanta is just their. I think they are the wittiest cast easily
Yeah.
of all the
Yeah. So funny.
franchises.
Yes.
It's you can kind of tell when other housewives are more like scripted and self-produced,
Yeah.
and I definitely think there's been an element of that over the course of the life of Atlanta, but there's just an undeniable like wit that is there that cannot be
Yeah.
replicated, so that keeps
Yes.
me coming back. I do love like the Georgia backdrop. I love the Southern
Yeah.
accents, and I think it's also some, as you alluded to earlier, it's something like Until Potomac was like was the blackest franchise,
Yep.
and so
Yep.
seeing that kind of representation and that wealth,
Mhm.
right, and just
Yes.
kind of like
Yes.
the different layers to that, it's always to me is like much more interesting, much more resonant for me,
Yeah.
as a person of color as
Yep.
well. So that's what kept me coming back, and I just think that the way that they were, because they also deal with some really heavy storylines, right, with
Yes.
for example, we have Nini's son, with his like
Yeah.
addiction issues, and
Yeah.
just a lot of like other like very real, and
Mhm.
obviously Sheray's money problems, right, we laugh
Yeah.
at that, but that's a very real
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah.
And I think that they were one of the first shows that really like dealt with that really head on. I think some of the
Yeah.
other franchises do, like Miami does now, New York does as
Mhm.
well. Obviously New Jersey with table flipping, but I think Atlanta had consistently over the course of
Yes.
its seasons has blended that line between like humor and like that
Mhm.
dark and the light that I think makes for a great
Yeah.
housewives show.
I love that. It's so true. The dark and the light, and they are so funny, like you said. Like, I mean, Nene was on Glee. Like, Nene got pulled from the
Yeah.
Housewives to be on like at that point, the show was amazing. Was great. It was a top show, and she got pulled as a
Yeah.
housewife to be an actress. And then yeah, I think the dark and the light. It's so true. They're very raw people, and I do think they're they want to stay on the show. They're willing to kind of show all parts of their lives, which is really beautiful.
Definitely. And it definitely
Amazing.
resonated obviously with audiences because I think
Yeah.
I don't look at like viewer numbers that much, but I do know
Yeah.
Atlanta was one of the most watched franchises for a long time, right? And
Yeah, I
so
think
the
so.
idea that like an all black cast can really
Yes.
be lead the
Mhm.
helm, viewership. It's great. I think, I mean, thinking about media more broadly, it's like representation
Mhm.
does matter. It does
Yep.
resonate with wide swaths of audience. You should not be
Yes.
afraid to put diversity out there in media. And I think they were just leading the charge like so effortlessly on that side of
Mhm.
things as well.
Yep, it's so true. So, so true. Great. Well, as we transition, I'd love to hear, like, what have you learned from watching reality TV that you take with you in business and your professional life?
Oh man, there's probably so many things that I've learned
Yeah.
from reality TV. Let me think of what's like a because I feel like I've learned a little bit from each franchise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can share
I
them all.
think, huh, I think honestly, from like Beverly Hills, I learned a lot about real estate, just like real estate and more generally, because I was
Yeah.
like, now how? I was like, and I was like, how do you afford? And I would like go and like research like all their deals, and I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I was like, these people are really insanely wealthy. Like, how do you do this? And learning about learning about like wealth creation and things like that, and
Yeah.
like just seeing how money is managed differently at that level is something that always like I keep in mind. But I think honestly, some of my most important lessons came from Dorinda from Real Housewives of New York.
Tell me.
I a quote that like I do live by this mantra, like
Yeah.
um, money talks, wealth whispers. Is I
Ooh,
think
I don't
something that
even
she
remember
said.
her saying that. Yeah, that's amazing.
But I think she's right. Like there's, because for all like the flash and whatever the
Mm,
gaudiness you might associate with the housewives, you can definitely see that there's like layers to this. And
yes.
that quote kind of always stuck with me, like money talks, wealth whispers. And I kind of
Mm,
extrapolated that into like your own personal success is that you can
yeah.
shout from the rooftops all about all you're doing, all you want, but at the end, like the proof is in the pudding, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a kind of a good reminder to just kind of focus on your own trajectory and your own success. Although it's weird when you try to have like a podcast or you're doing content
Yeah.
creation like you're doing, like I've been doing. I have to yell
Yeah.
because no one's gonna find your show or your writing unless you're like very promote
Yep.
like you self promotional. So I've had to kind of learn how to do that more for my own endeavors. But I think
Yeah.
in other parts of life that kind of just like put your head down and do the work and it'll speak for itself. I'm not sure how I extrapolate. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, how does this connect to Dorinda? I'm not sure. But I just really like that idea that
Yeah.
wealth whispers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's almost like you're saying, that work there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, and,
Right.
I think sometimes we'll be on Instagram or we'll be on LinkedIn, we see all these flashy things and we're like, "Oh my god, that person must be so successful and there must be like all of these things going on," but it's hard to know how that's really adding up for somebody behind the scenes, and so just focusing on that. Yes, we want to put ourselves at the front, certainly as Leos, I do at least, put ourselves out there and be able to speak and share our stories. And at the same time, there's so much happening underneath the surface. And like you said,
Definitely.
like kind of that good stuff is going to happen, in the silence sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, can you tell everyone a little bit about kind of your career and your transition into podcasting with Money Memories? We haven't even really dived into what Money Memories is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about that origin story.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I've built my career in financial services. I'm on the investment management side now, in venture capital. And really, my foray into kind of more creative endeavors started, during the pandemic about almost 4 years ago now.
Wow.
Um, when we had some time on our hands.
Yeah,
We
a
were
little bit.
working remotely.
Yeah.
And yeah, just I think that kind of shift in like routine, that always
Mm,
is really good for my brain. That's why I love to travel a lot, because I
mm,
find like I get a lot of great ideas, and I get a
mhm.
lot of inspiration just changing my habits, because I'm definitely a
Yeah.
creature of habit. So anything that shakes that up for me is always very good for my brain, and I really enjoy that. Um, I started with just kind of writing about personal finance. And it was a topic that I always avoided because I was like, oh my God, I work in finance all day. I don't want to have to write about it too. But I definitely realized that there's a difference between, institutional investment management and like dealing with all of that stuff, and just like
Yeah.
taking a step back and managing my own money. So I started with my own personal journey of during the pandemic. I was like, let me just sit down, see what I have in my accounts. What's my net worth? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What's going on? So
Wow.
starting in that trajectory, and then realizing I was like, hey, like I'm an educated person. I work in this field, and even I have a lot of questions and insecurities about some topics. So kind of writing about that as an outlet, and kind of seeking to explain concepts of personal finance. And eventually that, as I was writing that, I realized, like, I was like, you know what, there's a lot of resources available already if you're interested in learning what a 401k is or what an ETF
Yeah.
is. But there's not a lot of people talking about these feelings that we feel, right? This
Mm,
anxiety, this uncertainty. And I was like, why don't I just do a podcast about that? And so that's
yeah.
how I created Money Memories. It's a 20 to 30 minute show, and I interviewed different guests about the earliest and most impactful money memory, with the goal of highlighting. My goal is to highlight unique stories,
Yeah.
and diverse stories, so that every listener feels like there's something that they can resonate with in the guests that they hear. So that's been something I've been working on for about 4 years now, and yeah, I love doing it. I talk to really amazing people from all walks of life, and that's very important to me. And actually, a really funny thing. One
Yeah.
time, I was just looking at the who my guests were, like how many men, how many
Mm,
women, people of color, etc. And I think the last time I did this, like a minority of my guests are white guys.
yeah.
Most of my
Yeah.
guests are either women
Amazing.
or people of color, right? And it was a very like aha moment for me, because I
Yeah.
was like, this is why representation matters, guys. Like,
Yes.
because
Yes.
when you are it, it's easier to
Yes.
identify, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, I didn't set out to do. I always set out to do the show and bring different perspectives, but I didn't have a
Yeah.
quota in mind, right? And it just
Exactly.
became a great platform. So I'm super proud of the fact that my show, I think, has such a wide array of voices and experiences. And I have to thank actually when I started my podcast, I was like Googling all about it. Like, how do you
Yeah.
release a show? How do you promote it? So I batched my content. I recorded my
Okay.
first 10 episodes,
Wow.
and I sent some of them to some of my friends. And one of my good friends from high school, Lucy, was like, yeah, these are good guests, but why is everybody like an Ivy League background? And I was like, damn it, Lucy. I was like,
Damn it,
there's some
Lucy.
women in there. I was like, oh, like, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Our
think like
network.
I'm
Yeah.
but
Go
like
ahead.
that kind of nudge that I was like, wow, right, I thought I was doing so good, and you're right, there's so many different perspectives I'm missing out on. So that kind of really encouraged me to push
Mm,
myself on the kinds of guests that I wanted. So anyways, that's a little bit about Money Memories, and I'm obviously super proud that I have it distributed on npr.org now. And it's just a great honor to be doing this show. And it's just so much fun. I don't know. Don't you have fun doing podcasts, even if
yes.
when you're looking at it, you're like, I don't want to edit this.
Oh my goodness, I have so much fun podcasting. I love it, and I've listened to your show. It's great, and it's so interesting because yeah, we all have money stories. We all have money memories,
Yeah.
and you can, a few years ago, I was like, let me get better at managing my own finances, and let me dive into that. But like I'd do it, and I wasn't good at it, and I do it again, I wasn't good at it, and I finally someone suggested the book Art of Money. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a little bit more about the stories that we tell ourselves around money, and
Oh,
instead of
okay.
saying like, "Oh, it's like I need a budget tracker, I need to be on Mint, I need to be doing these things. Like it's actually kind of working through the mindsets that we have around money more, and if you feel shame or if you feel, not confident. And so yeah, I think it's so beautiful to be able to hear, for people to have that opportunity to reflect, and then others to be able to see themselves in those reflections that you have on your show. So I think
Thank
it's just
you.
like a really beautiful idea.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I
You're
haven't really
welcome.
thought about like my positioning of the show in a while.
Mm.
Because in the beginning you are trying to build like, you're like, what's it going to stand for? And I think I just been like in execution mode for so long that you kind
Yes.
of forget the relationship. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And like, so how did you get into, like, you're writing and you're sharing some of these things too.
Uh-huh.
So from your full-time job, like, are you just learning things on the side? Are you learning things in your role? Like, what does the balance of those two things look like? And yeah, I don't know. How do you kind of keep them going given your full-time responsibilities too?
Of course. Yeah, another aha moment that happened for me in creating the show, my Money Memories, and also during the same time, I was able to parlay some of my writing into a more formal
Mhm.
platform on
Yeah.
Forbes, where I can be a contributing fintech writer, which has been great as well. So having like these two, at first, I was like, when I discovered these two paths, I was like, but they're so unrelated. One's about, the financial,
Mm.
one's so formal and one's so personal. And then kind of, but then in talking to myself and others, it was like, well, what is this should? What is this should that I'm putting onto myself? Like, who says
Mm.
you should have to do one or the other? Like, it's a privilege to be able to have both audiences and both avenues, and it's fun more than anything. And
Mm.
so to go back to your question of how I manage it is like, this is really fun for me, period.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even if I'm like, finding hard to schedule things, or I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I need to promote it now. Like the act of creation is really
Mhm.
fulfilling, and I find that it makes me like happier person, which makes me a happier employee. And it's very cool that as a result of my this foray, I can parlay that now into my role as an investor, because I feel like I've talked to so many entrepreneurs, not only in fintech, but just in the startup ecosystem more broadly. And I've been able to parlay that into a differentiated perspective on what makes a good investment opportunity, right? So once I stopped being kind of, because in the beginning I was like, oh no, what's my employer going to think? And then I was like, no, this is what makes me me.
Yep.
And not only that, I'm tapping in to
Mm.
like an ecosystem, a network, a world that wasn't available to me before, and it's my superpower. I find
Mm.
it's very symbiotic, and so I stopped trying to fight it, and I just embraced it, and like all of the relationships that you build, the knowledge that you find, and I guess at my core, I'm someone who just loves to learn for the sake of learning.
Yeah.
I don't need an exam. Please don't test me on things, but I just like to accumulate knowledge. And I think both of these avenues allow me to do that. So it just feels very rewarding, and it doesn't feel like work. And it's
Mm.
very gratifying to see how you can grow something that you start from scratch, because, in our day jobs, we're kind of following direction more, which is its own thing. But with these platforms, I get like the only limit to the success is my own time and effort and kind of ingenuity. And it's just
Yeah.
a completely different way of moving in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful, and I hear that, like, courage from, like, the girl in the high school class who was like, "I'm watching Laguna Beach," and,
Yeah.
who's obviously
What?
the smart one, to the courage to being like, "I'm gonna be myself even in, a finance industry," which is, I went to business school, like, it's very difficult, I think, to feel like you can
Yeah.
bring your whole self to the table. And so I think that courage is so important, and it's kind of ideally what we're all trying to get to, is to be able to be
Yeah.
ourselves in these spaces. And particularly when we're not, of a dominant culture or of the dominant
Hmm.
people in an industry or in our teams or at an organization. And so I think it's beautiful to hear your courage to say like, hey, like this is all of me, and I'm going to bring myself to the table.
Thank you. And I also think it's a lot like prior to you know, beginning my podcast and the writing, I always kind of felt a sense of frustration in my life,
Mm,
because I was like, shouldn't work be like shouldn't this be everything for me? Shouldn't I just feel
mm,
super like accomplished all the time? And then when I finally started creating more and doing this, that's
mm,
when I felt more fulfilled and complete.
Yes.
And realized I don't need to pour so much of myself. Like there's different buckets that I can pour into, right? For time and
Absolutely.
feelings of myself. So I can allocate these buckets and like that together as 100% rather than having
Yes.
like before I had like a 0 here and maybe like 60. And I was like, well, why don't I
Mm-mm.
feel whole? And I was like, because I didn't
Mm.
have the other 40, right? So yeah, I think it's been a very virtuous cycle so far.
Yeah, no, it's such a beautiful point of like, particularly, yeah, we're trying to fill everything with our career or everything in one part of our lives, and it is really important to say like, okay, what is my career fulfilling for me now, and then like, how am I maybe putting boundaries on that career or on that space so that I have now the time and space to fulfill other things like swimming or figure skating or whatever that is, and so just being able to really create that for yourself is, you're right, it's so important. And
Totally.
so yeah, I actually wanted to ask you a question. Like, I don't know much about your fintech writing for Forbes. Like, what sort of things are you writing about, and what's or what or have written about?
Yeah, so some of my favorite topics to write about are about how technology is powering like more inclusion
Mm,
in access to financial services. I think
okay.
that's a very yeah, I think that when I think about like the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap, the gender wealth gap,
Hmm.
and how pervasive it is, I think a lot of what's not discussed is around like access to financial services products as well. Like when we say that it's more expensive to be poor than it is to
Yeah.
be wealthy, like
Hmm.
that's real. That's very
Yes.
real, right? And
Yes.
so, how do we facilitate more like access, like reducing some of these barriers so that people can, not there's one part of it is definitely education, but the other part is definitely
Yeah.
access. So that's always very interesting to me from like a philosophical level, but also from the technology that's powering that. And
Mm,
I also, as a result of maybe that angle, I really like to look at markets where I think there's a lot of disruption available. So emerging
yeah.
markets in particular, where there's really large disparities in social
Mm,
classes, right? So I love covering like fintech on the African continent, on
yes.
in Latin America. I actually did an internship at a venture capital fund in South Africa when I was in business school,
Wow.
and that really opened my eyes to like the innovation that was occurring there. And so those are areas that I think are a lot of fun to cover. And in my experience, it's really easy to get access to because so many US based or maybe like English speaking, let's say, coverage
Yeah.
is focused on, of course, understandably like Silicon Valley because there's a lot of action, there's a
Yeah.
lot of big financing rounds. But when I would write an article about some of these companies, most of the times like they would reach out to me and say, thank you for featuring us. And I was like, how did you find this?
Wow.
But I think that goes to show you like how thin the coverage is, right? And they're doing
Yeah.
incredible work as well. So
Mm,
that's kind of some stuff that I like to write about. Recently, I featured an article about generative AI kind of improving potentially like advertising technology and personalization. So it's nice to
wow.
think outside the box as well when it comes to fintech.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so as you started writing and, doing your podcast, were there mindsets that you kind of had to battle to get started or to
Yeah.
feel kind of more comfortable and confident? Yeah.
Yeah, I had to get over myself. I had to like I'm
Yeah.
like I had to get over that
Mm.
voice that's like, that's not good enough. What would your AP
Ugh.
English teacher say? I think she wants you to write more. And then, like,
Oh my gosh, I hear that voice so much. Yeah, I
you need to
totally.
shut her up. You need to put her
Ah!
in the closet, be like,
Yes.
shh,
Shut
I'm in
up.
creative
I won't say your
flow
name.
right now. Exactly. Hater, self-hater over
Hater,
here.
hater. Oh, I
But
love
yeah,
that.
the
Yeah.
hardest part was definitely just getting rid of that. You know, for
Yeah.
writing, it's like sitting down to write. And every
Mm.
time I sit down to write, I'm like, who am I? Literally, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Who am I to
Yeah.
even give you an opinion? Like, why
Mm.
do you care about this? Right.
Yeah.
But then every time, without fail, you write it and you're like, that was so good. Or
Ah!
you're like, look at that was pretty snazzy. I
Yes.
think I did
Yeah.
pretty decently, you know? So
Oh my
getting
goodness.
over that
Mm.
monster is just like I think my dad, it's like a
Mhm.
paper tiger. It's not real. It's not actually gonna. That's we talk to ourselves, and similar with
Yeah.
podcasting. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, like you might record the episode and it's great, and then you have
Yeah.
to like, since I edit my shows, I was like, oh, I do not want to listen to myself talk, and then you're like,
Yeah.
well, girl, if the only thing standing between this and like release is you got to get over that, right? So
Yes. I love that.
I think getting over the negative self-talk, because
Mhm.
all my life has kind of been built around kind of uh, kind of attaining perfection, whether I knew it or
Yes.
not,
Mhm.
and really embracing the ethos of like progress over perfection and like
Yes.
slow and steady growth, which I think
Yeah.
is what content creation rewards, um, has been the biggest challenge.
Absolutely, Ilona, you're so wise. Yes, I definitely think that it's so important. And even, yeah, me and my podcast, I'm like, who wants to hear what I'm saying? Who cares? And there's someone listening, so I know you care. But but it's getting over that monster. But when you're done, you feel so proud and you feel so happy. And there's just
Yeah.
something so beautiful about creating something that we all
Yes.
just don't always get to do every day. And so getting to make something from scratch is the best feeling.
And don't you find that with podcasting in particular, because I think being a great host is about being a good listener and
Yeah.
also coming and doing your research. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that inform like every job you can do on earth requires one of those two skills. And so I can't tell you how much of a better I think communicator I've become in work
Yeah.
because of podcasting. Because every
Yeah.
time there's like if it's like a meet, I'm like, well, what do? We like listen and we research, right? And
Yeah.
so if I can bring a little bit of that to the table, and also because we're so used to podcasting like virtually, like
Yes.
how many awkward silences have you had to endure over the course of like it's not
Yes.
frightening anymore,
Yeah.
Whereas so in the real world you're like, I'm gonna let you pause. You're not like
Yes.
so anxious, right? I think it
Mm.
serves like a really nice social lubricant. So I think it's made me more easygoing with people in general,
Yeah.
because in this platform, that's kind of we're just practicing the art of communication.
Absolutely. I love that. Beautiful. So, as we kind of close out, like, what advice do you have for women or women of color, maybe in the space, whether that be like finance, fintech
Yeah.
space, or wanting to make a podcast or create something for themselves?
I would say, um, so first of all, maybe like listen to my advice, but then go find some other advice. I'm a big accumulator of knowledge. So, right. So
Yes.
collect the bouquet of advice as you so
Yes.
choose. So maybe this will apply
Mm.
to you, maybe it will not. But I think
Yeah.
one thing that's really resonated with me in the last maybe like year or so has been this idea that other people's journey does not have to be mine, or like
Yeah.
what's worked for others doesn't have to apply to me, especially when we talk about being like an underrepresented minority in whatever
Yeah.
profession or area you're in, because so often you might hear well-intentioned advice that
Yes.
applies to the person who hasn't really shared your same experiences potentially.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about like going to certain schools or whatnot, but like your lived experience, right? As a woman or as a woman of color. And so it's okay to like listen to that and and like put it away sometime. Like
Yeah.
if you or like you can listen to it, you can try it, but I've definitely found like especially the more that I work, and the more tenure that I build, like not every piece of advice is going to be applicable to me. So it can be frustrating at times finding your own pathway and figuring out what works for you. But
Yeah.
for you, it might be think like leaning more into like your own diverse perspectives, or being more of a contrarian sometimes is what it might manifest in, right? But um some because some I definitely like when I think of some kind of feedback I've gotten in my career, I'm just like, oh, that was really bad. But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
didn't know, because that's what worked for you, but it was never going to
Yes.
work for me, right?
Yeah.
So to kind of like map your own journey, feel it out,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
recognize that like not everything is going to be applicable to you, and that's okay.
Yes, I love that. Beautiful. Okay, and what other reality TV shows should people be watching right now?
Oh my gosh, there's like so many of them. You know what? We need more wholesome content in our lives, and
Oh,
I've been
okay.
watching the Junior British Bake Off,
I love the British Bake Off, but the junior one, so
right?
cute. I haven't seen it. I'm gonna have to see
They're
it.
so wholesome and pure and
Yeah.
talented, and
Oh,
it's just a great, like, get in that festive spirit, bring the family together, watch some
yes.
children baking. Um,
Yeah.
go go have fun.
What's in children baking? I love it. Perfect. Different than Real Housewives of Atlanta. Different. Okay. And where can people find you at? Yeah, where can people find you at?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Ilona on the Money. If you're interested in listening to my show, you can find it at moneymemoriespodcast.com. And you can find my writing on Forbes under my name. But if you follow me on social media, you'll be able to get all the links to all of my shows and my articles there.
And find all those links in the notes for today as well. So, thank you so much, Ilona, for joining me today. It's such a beautiful conversation. It's so fun. I like want to have you back, do Potomac or Miami.
Let's do it.
But I just appreciate you being willing to chat today, and I'm excited to hear, as Money Memories and your writing and your career continues to grow, what everything looks like.
Thank you, Victoria. What a great honor. Thank you for hanging in there with me and for asking good questions. You're an amazing host, and I'm so excited for your show and can't wait to see it grow and support you in that journey.
Thank you.